When Raising Cane's fans are happy, we're happy, like Tyler here.
I'll be naming my firstborn son Kane in honor of Raising Cane's.
Maybe his middle name can be Delicious. Let's hear from Mary B.
Is it crazy to have a dream about swimming in cane sauce?
Hey, whatever floats your chicken finger boat. Thanks for the shout-out, Caniacs. You're making us blush with your love for our cook-to-order, hand-battered chicken fingers, hand-squeezed lemonade, fries, Texas toast, and cane sauce. Keep that love coming. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Supernatural Substation. It's Friday. For those of you who are still keeping track, it is Friday, the 16th of February in the year 2018. I'm Eileen Castanio, your host, and in the wings is my erudite best friend host, Bernadine.
What is up?
That. Yes. No, what's up? I have no clue about this show tonight. So like I said, I didn't know that there were aliens in the French Quarter. Anyway, you guys are lost already. Tonight's guests, Chad and Alta Dillard, the authors of a book called Orbducted in the French Quarter. And as a New Orleans native and an honorary New Orleans native in Bernadine, we've been laughing about anything and everything that can happen in the French Quarter. So nothing is a surprise to me. But we were saying that I really didn't know about this event, so I'll be hearing about it for the first time, along with some of you, I suppose. So, but we were all chit-chatting with Joe and you and me about the French Quarter. I have never heard... I've heard of UFO. He mentioned like a UFO flying over the French Quarter. Joe. Hello. Hello. Somebody's in the background. I love it. Live radio.
Oh my goodness.
Well, anyway, Joe, can you bring me a sandwich, Joe?
Oh my God.
Yeah, no. Anyway,
can you hear us over this?
Nobody's listening. Nobody's listening.
Hurry, sailing soon. Well, just call me Shopper in Chief. We're going to Old Navy now. Hot fashion, Old Navy.
What are we watching? Are we watching Live PD? Or, oh, I think he caught it.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, hang on, because at 9:30, these people are going to be Chad and Alta. In the meantime, we're going to be trying to get in touch with the walking man. Okay, let's see. Let me just call him. Look, we can do this. I'll call his phone.
I'll contact him on
Who's
Pal
laughing?
Talk.
Who is laughing in the back? Yeah, now it's trying to walking man. Okay, I love it. I love it. Let me call him up and see.
Must be his television.
Yeah.
I'll contact him on Pal Talk. Oh my goodness, that's us.
I love it
We're listening to ourselves. Must be his television.
Do you hear my phone ring?
No. Hello? Eileen, did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm here, dear.
Okay.
Oh, he's got it. No, you don't, Joe, because I can hear your TV. And I'm hearing reverb on us right now. I think that's because I have the remote.
Holy
Right,
moly.
okay, are you there? I've got it.
This is why we have our guests come on 30 minutes
No,
late
you know what?
to the
This is why we don't have live, what do you call it? Live webcams, right?
show.
Because
Yeah.
we'll see somebody scratching their ass and playing grab ass going, what's the matter? Oh, no. That's why. Shit. We might be a new reality TV program by the time this is all over.
You're like, we remember those
Hey.
people.
Yeah, they're
That's
really
Louisiana.
smart, but they make them look dumb. Well, you see, like I said, you start talking about the French Quarter and all kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
I don't remember so much about the French Quarter from growing up. It's just until I got older and said, man, and people told me things like, you should have seen. But let's start this over, okay? This is, as if you didn't know, this is the Supernatural Substation. Anything can happen. It is Friday, and I think we already got the date. And later tonight, in about 15 minutes now, we're going to hear from Chad and Alta Dillard about their abduction, but they call it Orbducted. So I think it has something to do with an orb or a bubble. But you see, I mean, I'm walking blind here because I knew nothing about the event. So we're all going to hear it. Like I said, a repeat. We're all going to hear it now for the first time. And I think Joe will have my sandwich ready by that time. But you were talking about the French Quarter. And yeah, there's some pretty weird things down there. I mean, if you look at Destination Paranormal, you'll see the repeat of a show where there's like flying vampires on the top of the St. Louis Cathedral, vampires walking the streets of the French Quarter. Then we have werewolves, we have the real blood drinkers, the not blood drinkers, we have the psychic vampires, we have the witches, the real witches, we have the voodoo people, we have this, we have that, but I have never heard beyond
gargoyles.
Well, yeah, we even have a devil baby. I mean, the devil's own child crawls all over New Orleans, as well as the ghost of Marie Laveau and the ghost of every other damn person. But the only time, I mean, the weird things really got national attention is during Katrina, obviously, when, New Orleans was flooded and evacuated, and there was just some really weird things going on. I was talking about the National Guard being in the city. They were in the city, at least. They used as a base of operations Sophie B. Wright School, which I think is on, I want to say, it's not on Canal. It may be on Canal. I'm thinking of Warren Easton, but I think it too is on Canal. Anyway, they were there, and they were talking about how the school was haunted. It had been haunted, but there was a lot of activity. And then they went to, they were dispatched or deployed or whatever you want to say, into the Ninth Ward. They found a Bible, and I've written about this, and we talked about it. I think they talked about it on the History Channel episode that I was on, and they found a Bible open to a particular verse in a destroyed church down in the Ninth Ward. And I don't know what verse it is. I have it. Like I said, I have the information somewhere, but it was about the destruction of a city and the wrath of God. And, they were like, wow, and then they went up to Baton Rouge, where they were policing some damaged places up there. And somebody found a Bible, and it was open to the same exact page, same exact chapter as the one a couple of 100 miles away in, the Ninth Ward. So that's the kind of stuff that happens in South Louisiana and in New Orleans, so I never make fun of anything anybody says, unless I know they're making it up. There's some stuff that's just totally made up, but we won't get into that. But if somebody tells me they were abducted by aliens, it's absolutely possible that they were, so because, I mean, I don't know, what do you think aliens are? I mean, are they in space? Are they space people? Or are they, I listened to the show ahead of ours, and,
I believe there could be, like hybrids here. I mean, if the aliens have been around as long as they say, research people have done, since the pyramid times and all of that. I mean, I do believe that we're not the only people here besides the spirits.
Yeah, but like,
I mean, I don't think we're the only planet.
No, I mean,
that has life,
or the only cosmos or universe either.
And they do have to have another planet that's more intelligent than we are. I have to believe that.
Yeah, or they just stamped us failed you know, and recently they updated it to epic fail.
For the outside world.
Pretty soon it'll be destroy, and then we'll go through the shredder or whatever. You know, I mean, seriously.
The rejected outside the solar system.
I don't know, you know, I mean, as a we've been here long enough to not deserve to be here. I don't know how we started out as whatever, but I mean, you know, my feelings on it. I think
I just think the lab rats for them, maybe. I don't know.
The lab rats for something. I don't know that it's something from some other planet. You know, my feelings always been that it's been the same thing that we experience and encounter now, all the different ages of the Earth. The earliest descriptions with the Sumerians and everything didn't really fit with like the little gray men. They were more like there was that. Get it out, Ellie. There was more like viper, which is I understand a type of alien, reptilian, but primarily viper looking, and with the slanted eyes and more like the narrow face, kind of like I guess praying mantis, sort of insect looking. And when I hear insect and alien or unexplained being, it immediately makes me think of demons, because people are really comfortable with the images that we have of demons, even the ones that are upsetting, and everything, like the gargoyle look, the I don't know, the big mouth in the medieval pictures or the medieval portraits of hell, beasts that look like dogs. But when there's a woman named Rosalie Norton, and she was an artist and she was a practitioner. She was an Australian witch, and she drew from life, from experiences with the entities that she was invoking and that she was working with, worshiping. And she drew the demons that she met with. All of them, nearly all of them, had insect-like features. And that was when it was like, like if you're driving along, you go, what? And you stop the car, because it never really, I never really stopped to think about it, but it was like, that's probably the worst thing in the world. Like, you remember the movie The Fly? Okay? Yeah. Or, a big roach or a giant praying mantis with multiple heads and hands. And I was like, yeah, wouldn't it be a big surprise? It's not this comfortable monster of, the demons from, the medieval depictions in the woodcuts. And, it's not these reptilian looking, whatever you want to picture aliens. It's freaking bugs. Okay. If that's demons, then you got to get to church. Right. I mean,
yeah.
They'll cocoon you. No.
Get the raid or something.
Absolutely. The raid, the cat, call somebody. But it never, I had read and I knew that, it was sort of like just kind of in the back of my mind. But when you begin to look at her art, it's like, shit, I don't want to encounter one of these things. Mm-hmm. I absolutely don't want to encounter one of these things. My God. And, some people might not be afraid of insects. I don't know, but I'm not a particular fan of any of that, anything with wings and that, crunches when you kill it or anything. Nope. Thank you. So, there is a group of there is a demon, I guess, I don't know, subgroup or whatever, that could look like a lot like what modern illustrations and depictions of aliens looks like. And because of the overlap, I tend to think that they're in this cosmos with us, but they're not necessarily what people think they are. We were just, I was just talking with somebody on Facebook because he posted, I think I tagged you in it, the guy that disappeared on Whiteface Mountain. Did you read that? I think I tagged you.
No, you tagged me, I didn't get to read it.
Yeah, you need to read this one because this guy, he was a Toronto fireman. He's been a fireman. He was with a group of firemen down skiing on Whiteface Mountain. And the group got separated and they never found him. They looked for him for a week. The FBI, K9, everybody, the Army Rangers, whatever, were looking for this guy for a week at least. And 7 to 8 days later, on the other side of the country, because Whiteface is in, I think it's in America, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it's on the east side. Okay, he turns up in Sacramento, California, in his ski suit with the helmet, the goggles, gloves, etc., and doesn't know how he got there. Now,
Wow.
to me, that's interesting. It was Michael Angley that shared that with me, and he's another host of another show, Discovered Paranormal, on our network. Now, he shared it, and apparently there have been disappearances, other unexplained disappearances. Some of them are probably explainable as abductions, real abductions with, human beings involved, because they did find bodies or evidence of that. But apparently this is one of several, and this one is somebody who actually survived it. They didn't just disappear, but they showed up back. But how did he get in 3,800 miles away or 2,800, on the other side of the country? He doesn't know how he got there.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Beam him somewhere. He got there somewhere. And this leads into the rifts in times, the portals and the things, that, you can go back in time, and this whole idea of, time in flux instead of linear as we think about it. But
or just like walking through this I've seen I don't know what you call it, where it's like splits open and you walk through and you're somewhere else.
Yeah.
I forget what they call that. The Causeway, and you go to you want to get away from New Orleans crime. Well, by the way, we only had like 5 shot on Mardi Gras Day, just wanted to say. And then the next day they had like, on Ash Wednesday, 12 people. The same time they were killing kids over, and we were just regular every day. Just thought I'd throw that in there. We had several deaths, and New Orleans made the front page of the Chicago Tribune because I guess misery loves company, and they just wanted to show them, you think it's bad here? Look at New Orleans, you could be down there. Right.
So people have said that about the French Quarter, though. They have, there have been over the years lost time episodes, encounters, people that lost a whole day, but they're still geographically in the same place. They just don't remember, don't know what happened to them for any length of time. So I'm imagining that, our guests may have had some sort of an experience like that. But, I'm not 100% on with the extraterrestrial, spacey thing. I mean, I might change my mind after I hear these people talk and, hear about their story, but I've never really been on board with that. But the overlapping images, the eyes and the slanty eye, the small mouth and all that, those, you look at Aleister Crowley's drawings of his so-called guardian angels. Lamb was one of them, and you can look these up online. Aiwass was another one that gave him the Book of the Law, and they look like aliens. And I know there was a working done where a guy was working over a week to get in touch with Beelzebub. I'm just cut to the chase here. And he thought it didn't work. And then one morning he woke up and Beelzebub was standing in his corner. And the way that he described him was exactly the way, in appearance, at least in facial appearance, that Crowley's guardian angels looked, that many of the people that encounter and are abducted by aliens describe these aliens to be.
I wonder if they could shape shift.
Of course.
The demons can shape shift to what we, recognize, things we recognize.
Well, I've always thought in that regard, that's why I believe this is a demonic reality that has been in here with us. We were really put into this system, into this, we're talking about mankind. We really don't belong here. Like, we've had a long enough time to screw up the whole thing for all of eternity. And then, at some point, somebody will have to pull the plug. But we really don't belong here. And when we got here, we began to get in touch with something that was always here. If you believe in the God, the creation, cast out the demons, the war with St. Michael leading the angels and all, they were cast out somewhere. And they went down as a fireball. And that particular rebellion was led by, people say it differently, Belial, by a different angel than Lucifer. Okay, that was not the first rebellion. Okay, so they were cast down, they lost their form, they were here already. And, the demigods and the nature spirits and the things that, spirits of the well, spirits of water, trees, forests, that's always been here. That's what this, and in a sense, probably these particular angels or this whole group of daemons was cast down into this reality. So people have been encountering them, forever since we've been here. And I believe that in every age of man, they appear in a way that we would understand and recognize. So if you and I were living in the 1500s, they would probably appear as little fairies. We'd see the little gnomes and sprites, and we would see demons that looked like the common perception or the conception of demons, which was really controlled by the concept of the church. The what do you call it? The red devil with the cloven hooves and all. We would see them like that because that's the way we expect. Now that we are on the brink of punching a hole in our reality and letting these things in, the other things, the really, really bad things that are out there, they're looking to like benevolent, spacemen. They're looking like, these harmless little whatever. Now, there is a whole, roughly 50% of the encounters we're being experimented on. We were terrified. Okay, then there's the other 50, maybe more percent. They're wonderful. They're this, they're that. They've been there. And so if these things that are in here with us, let's say, can do the things that they've been doing, then what's going to happen when we are able to breach this reality and we bring in the other things that are worse than the ones that we've experienced here? Because we've experienced some pretty bad stuff. So what happens then? So I'm going to leave that on that thought. Because, Joe, where's my sandwich, Joe? Bernadine, would you welcome our guests? They're in the queue. Go ahead.
Hi, Chad. Are you there?
We are here. So
Hey.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for coming.
Hi. I'm Aline Pastanio. I'm the other host. And in the lead up, we were talking about, I'm in New Orleans and I'm from New Orleans. So we were talking about your experience, and I have never heard of it. So it's my virgin ears listening to you about what happened, about what's in your book, and I'm anxious to hear about it. So I guess I'll set it up for you, or why don't you do that? The book is called Orbducted in the French Quarter. So I'd like you to introduce yourself and just tell me what happened.
Well, again, we just the book just came out on print this last June, so not even a year old yet. But we've been doing interviews about our experiences for quite a while now. And but my name is Chad, and I'm from Arkansas originally, and Alta is from Arizona originally. We first moved to the French Quarter back in '95, and we've lived here this is our third time living here. We're back here. We've been back about a year and a half now.
So you were here for Katrina?
No, we left. We were here 95 to 99. No, I'm sorry. Alta's better at that.
So we lived here originally 95 to 98.
Yeah.
Left, went back out to the Southwest where I'm originally from. The New Mexico area had some very, I use the term high strangeness for everything. I borrowed it years ago, and it's just something I'm consistent with. To me, it just explains everything. And so anyhow, a lot of that was taking place in New Mexico. because of our jobs, we then had to go to Denver. We ended up in Denver just in time. We got there just a few months before Columbine exploded, kind of just up the road from us. Right. It was just too much. And so ultimately we came back to New Orleans in 2000 and then left. Essentially, we thought for the, permanently in 2001. And then we just returned in 2016. So it's been
sojourn
journey.
everywhere. Yeah, that is wild. Yeah, and high strangeness for sure. And we were kind of cutting it up a little before you joined about high strangeness in the French Quarter is pretty much, status quo down there.
Yeah.
I know how it can get.
Absolutely.
And you guys are back here now in Louisiana, in New Orleans?
We are. We returned in 2016 and
have been here ever since.
Only we are, several miles outside of the quarter this time around. So, somewhat rural and thank the heavens, because it's too crazy for me.
It is. It's been Alta. It's had that vibe. It's had that vibe down there since Katrina. And, I've often, I don't want to get into the weeds. I want you guys to tell me what happened to you, but I just wanted to say I've often talked about right after it. There was such a shadow. There was literally a palpable dread because, all the spirits and all the altars were barren and the spirits weren't fed. And it really hung over New Orleans. And I don't think we've ever come out from under it. I really don't. But that's another story and that's another thing. When you had your experience here, what time frame was it?
Well, it's interesting what you just mentioned, and we'll concur. We totally agree from our perspective of being outsiders, coming in, leaving, coming back, and now returning after Katrina. We feel, I'm speaking for Chad, he does fine for himself, so I'll just speak for myself. It does feel very different. Our first apartment, I'd like to mention at the time that this took place, this was in 95. I was 35, I think, 36, 7, somewhere in that age range. Chad's 10 years younger than I am. So give you just kind of a perspective of our age. We've been together since 1990, married in 91. And so, and we've never had children, which is what has allowed us, I imagine more than anything, to be somewhat vagabonds all over the country. But I gotta say, these experiences have, from my perspective, compelled me at times so often against my will. I feel it, making kind of really irrational decisions. But when we first moved to the quarter, we were extremely naive. I'm mixed Indian, born on a reservation in Arizona. That's my world in terms of anything that's outside of, the norm. Chad's from Arkansas. In the French Quarter, we were not prepared for it.
Newbies.
Oh man, they saw us coming. But thank the heavens, as we entered into that realm, we were very childlike in a lot of ways, and I feel like that helped us a great deal, dealing with the impact of what we came into. Our first apartment happened to be above the Voodoo Temple on Rampart, due to economics.
No way. That was that apartment?
Yeah,
that's that is the apartment where that man, where Zach
and Addie.
Zachary Bowen, chopped up Addie Hall. That's what the episode. I was on that History Channel episode about that Katrina Cannibal, they called it, which I didn't like. But the whole place is now run as a quote unquote voodoo museum, and tours, investigations are done now. But that apartment. And many people, I guess, have moved through it, but that is ironic. That's really ironic because, I mean, how did you guys feel living in there? Because it's always been haunted. That particular building has been there since like 1830, and it's been many things. But
absolutely,
that particular apartment was always haunted. So, wow.
Right.
Yeah, we had their exact apartment. 10 years prior to when they had it, and it was alive. It was
Mm.
that the whole building, the whole property is, it's alive. And, we had many experiences there.
We had, without taking up, I understand, we kind of have a time constraint here. We had all form of anomalous or high strangeness from very, very crazy time slip kind of experiences. Ghosties, the ghost, Chad, the voodoo priest who had died just prior to us moving there.
That was Chicken Man.
That's right.
Chicken Man who died. Yeah, Prince
Chad had a.
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Chad had we've waited so long to talk to you guys, you women, you beautiful women, to us. We hear the accent and it's like coming back again. And it's just, we've been under the radar for so long, and then kind of got brought out several years ago to be public, and it was never our intention. So it's just so wonderful. It feels real, in a weird way, real comforting to hear you.
It's
it's
interesting that it's amazing that you're talking about that very place. And we can get in a little later, but Leo Watermeyer, who owned the building or still owns the building, he said that it's always been haunted. You can't have a place in New Orleans that was constructed in the entire city is so on top. And I write fiction and nonfiction about them. I write ghost stories about it. I saw some of my family's been in this city 6 generations back. I mean, we've been here since the late 1700s on one side and the 18 teens on the other side.
That's right.
So, I've heard this all my life, but that particular building, let me put you in the time frame of 2005. Katrina's coming and they call a mandatory evacuation, even though the French Quarter is higher than anything in that area, and it didn't flood this time. Sister Miriam Chamani had to leave that altar. She had to leave that building, and she had to go. I think she was in Atlanta or, somewhere distant that it would take time for her to get back. All of those altars down there, all of those cemeteries, everything that, basically was feeding the spirits were barren for weeks at a time. So where do these spirits go? Good and bad, but, primarily. Right. So, these 2 kids move in to this place, and, it's been, Katrina Weedland on, what is it, Paranormal Lockdown says, he wasn't possessed. Yes, he was.
Right.
He was out of body possessed. He was seeing himself doing things, and he wrote about it, and he wrote on the walls about it.
Right.
Because it's entirely uncharacteristic for this man to chop up to have sex with her, to strangle her, have sex with her, chop her up, consider eating her, and, then come home and say he didn't know what he was doing because, having these lucid moments, that's possession. That's what it was. And there were spirits loose that were looking for people. And those 2 stayed in the city through the whole thing. They didn't evacuate. They were living around the corner in Governor Nichols. So this is just like kismet with you guys there. People can say he wasn't possessed. Saying he's not possessed meant that he had a mental breakdown. He was possessed, and I don't think he knew what he was doing at the time. I hope that this sets up your experience with that you talk about in the book. So I'm excited to hear the rest of your experiences.
Oh, I'm sorry again. I so apologize, and we're just so excited on this.
No, we are.
It's so fun to hear you.
I am definitely.
The book, when it was originally penned, when I was, neither one of us are authors. That's why we so appreciate you. I just sat down and just started writing, and it was much larger. Once it went to editor, they decided to edit it, it's a very small book now. Some people have been real complimentary about it because it's an easy read. It's been hard for us because we feel that so much of this, my point is that may have all been edited out of it, which was heartbreaking for me on a personal level because these experiences are mind-blowing. And it's just so wonderful after all these years to hear you, the both of you, who know what we are talking about in that location.
Yep. Yep.
Because it is.
And I think you and I are about the same age, Alta, and I wish you'd have been down here in the 70s because that was when the French Quarter was, I mean, I grew up in the 70s, Led Zeppelin,
Right.
the whole Spellbound Jeans, the whole thing.
That's
and
right.
it was so much more bohemian than it is now. It's almost like right now it's more of an affection of bohemian, but back then. But the city is 300 years old this year.
That's right.
So, like I was saying in the intro, which you didn't, anything is possible in the French Quarter. Really, anything is. So that's why.
Discovered.
Yeah, and the coincidence is just, I'm like jazzed about that. I can't believe that.
Well, but, it's interesting. Again, you said that because my first visit with the Quarter was in 78. And at that point, I'm 21, 2, 3, something like that. Getting a real good taste.
I think I'm a little younger than you. Yeah,
oh,
we were in the same, we're in the same pool, though.
That's right, same pool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did have opportunity to taste it in a very different time, and just so from this experience in this apartment, because Chad had, just to really wet your whistle. Again, not even sure if it's in the book still. Chad had a very up close and personal experience with the priest who had passed just the year that we had moved in, Chad, or just within months. Up close and personal.
Well, this was Miriam's husband.
From
okay, him,
right?
Yeah,
okay.
From and
from
Belize.
He was from Africa, or where was he from?
Right.
Yeah, okay, Belize. Well, it's coincidentally there's the Chicken Man who is an icon. He died around the same time, and she actually has his ashes on her altar too. So it's like near the same time that they both died. But I do remember now that you say it that her husband died. So go on, Chad.
Oh yeah. So I'm laying there in bed. This was like our first week of living there, and I'm laying there in bed, and we're in that kind of, I don't know have you ever been to that apartment?
Anyway, I've seen it. Yeah, but I haven't stayed in it. That would luckily.
Yeah. Well, when you walk in, there's that main room, and we had our bed in there. We had just moved in. We hadn't gotten a big bed for the actual bedroom. So we're laying there in bed, and I kept feeling like something was crawling on my chest. And I'd wake up and I would scratch, and I'd wake up and I'd scratch. And this happened throughout the night. 4 or 5 times, and always in the always in the exact same spot, right kind of on my chest, right around my heart area. And so I get up to, and I dug a couple layers of skin off. I get up, I worked in a restaurant business at the time. I get up, I go to work, and it wasn't a dream. This vision, this memory starts coming back to me. And I'm laying there in bed, and there was this person floating above me. And I could see him. I could only see him from his waist up. From his waist down was like a mist or clouds. And he had no shirt on. He just had a few like African beads, very short afro. And he would take his finger and tickle me right there on my chest. And I would go up and scratch. And when I would go up and scratch, he'd pull away and fade away. And again, this happened, 4 or 5 times throughout the night. And it was just, so I get home, out to be a Native American. I get home, I grab the smudge, and I'm like, I light it up, and I've got the, smoke just going in there, the sage and everything. And I'm like, hey, I don't know who you are. I don't know what's going on. I said, I have never had this kind of experience before. I said, you don't have to go anywhere. I said, I'm going to paint this apartment. We're going to have us a really nice place. Just leave us alone. You ain't got to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. Just leave us alone.
But you can't stay here.
Yeah. Just, leave us alone. We'll have us a nice place to live. We can, but I never had any other experiences, with him. A couple of months later, a couple had moved in down below us, and she had been married by the priest. and she was showing me her wedding pictures, and she's like, yeah, and this is, I can't remember his name, but this is priest such and such. And she hands me the picture, and I'm like, oh my God, that's who I saw floating above my bed. And I told them the story that I told you, and they're like, yeah, he was a trickster. He would test you to see if, you were, cool enough or, all right to be in his space, to be, around him. So, but yeah, that was one of the things that happened.
Approval, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But so yeah, where did the aliens come into it, or is it even aliens? And I'm wondering about the Orbducted title, because I know what an orb is, and Bernadine knows too. And so, I don't know what happened, and tell me about that and where that happened.
Well, we lived in the apartment in 95. A few months later, we moved into a different apartment. And I guess I'll let Alta move into this part.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're 97.
Mm-hmm.
We're living on Toulouse. And we're living in a lot of high strangeness involved just even in the moving, the locations. Like an invisible hand seemed to be creating or whatever situations, opportunities for us that seemed to be moving us along in the world. We were doing really well in the quarter. This was an amazing apartment townhouse. This was 97. It was going to be my 40th birthday. My mom was going to relocate. My only family besides Chad was going to relocate she was in poor health from Arkansas to the quarter. We had pre-rented her a mother-in-law cottage in our courtyard. It was all set up. That was not meant to be. She died on that day in Arkansas. And so that was crazy enough in itself. My mother dies on my birthday. And, just this huge impact to both of us. So we have to go to Arkansas, handle her affairs. We get moved back. We get everything back again. I'm not doing well at all, but I am maintaining. Chad's doing better, but not as good as could be because he's heartbroken as I am. I'm working in a shop that had been started, owned by a family, the family still owns this business. They started their business in 1929 and they had a couple of shops in the quarter. I go to work at the one shop that is closest to our place on Toulouse, and that was just a couple blocks away. They hired a young woman who, keeping age in mind, I had just turned 40. Chad is 10 years younger than I am. He was 30. This young woman was 24. She was a transplant also, like we were. The family that brought her in, let me just say, she was a familiar to me. From the moment we first met, I knew her, and she seemed to know me. So that just gives you an idea. One night, she realized that we were very lost and sad with the death of my mom. She asked me if I wanted to go out in the quarter and have dinner and drinks. I agreed. We'd never done it before. I said, let's call Chad. I know he'll want to join us. Chad gets dressed and, cleaned up, what have you, walks the couple blocks over to the shop. Now, our friend lived in Algiers Point. So she either had to drive a car to work or she took the ferry. On this particular day, she drove her car. She parked her car up the street. Now, this is on the opposite side of the quarter of where our event took place. It's actually Conti for anybody who knows the quarter. She parked her car up on that street that morning. We're going to walk the quarter. It's going to all be spontaneous. It's no plans. We're going to start from one end of it and just make the 13 blocks, whatever it is, just do as we please. From the moment we stepped out of the shop, it was around 9:30 p.m. So to speed the story along, let me just say that there was no doubt to me that I was experiencing, and stated it out loud, that the energy was weird. Now, I don't go around talking like that, but that's what I was saying when I stepped out of the shop. It felt weird. It just felt off. Well, not thinking too much about it, just made that comment. They both agreed with me. We start on Bourbon. We're going to work all the way across. Again, I'll speed the story up. We stopped in 3 different locations. The first location was a place Chad had worked. when we first moved to the quarter in 95. So we knew everybody there. We knew the owners, we knew management, what have you.
And whereabouts was this, Alta? Whereabouts was that show?
This was on Bourbon Street. This was it's 7-Eleven. It used to be 7-Eleven Bourbon. Now it's, I think, Bourbon Heat or something like that, right next to Caspia.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to track it in my mind. Follow you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so wonderful that you know where we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you know that's a fairly large, or was, I haven't seen it since, kind of arena, small bar off the street. You've got a courtyard that is restaurant as well. You got a dance club upstairs, so on and so forth. The point is, we get to this place. That's our first point of origin, for the night. And there's nobody there. And when I say there's nobody there, there's nobody there. Now, we had also taken note as we're walking there. Where is everybody? It was like a few stragglers. It was like, where is everybody? So when we get to this location, when I say there's nobody there, we mean that. It was barren, with the exception of one person. And the one person that was there was a friend that we hadn't seen in a long time. He'd heard about my mother's death, was very sorrowful for me, what have you. He happened to be management, I think, at the time. I'm like, where is everybody? I don't even remember the response. Just brushed me off. Okay, that started our evening. We leave that location. Let me also point out, he made us a house drink. None of us remember having a drink. As far as we're all concerned collectively, and we're still friends with the friend that was taken with us, no alcohol, no drugs. And to the best of our knowledge, there wasn't anybody around to drug us. So moving the story along, we leave that location. We stop at 2 more locations. Same identical story.
We really didn't even stop. We just kind of looked in, and there was nobody in there. So, and we were looking, for other people to
and music
party and play with, so we would just keep walking, and so we were making our way kind of towards the Esplanade area.
And our last location, our last attempt was a place that we had been to many times before. We didn't go out all the time, but when we did, we had a couple of haunts that we enjoyed, hanging at, and it was always a good time. This was our last location. And once again, it's barren, but very different even in this regards. There had never been, you have to go upstairs to go to the bar, to hang out in the bar. Never before had the door been closed with the sign on the front of it saying cover charge. That had never happened. It's like, we've been doing this a couple years. It's like, what? It's like, this is weird, just topping off weird. We pivot on the stairs in a huff saying, we never did this before. We're not about to start now. We come down the stairs. We're back out on the street, Esplanade. We cross. That's our last street. We cross Checkpoint Charlie's is on that corner. Now, at that point, we can see the door is open. Ain't nobody in there. This is just too weird. This is too weird. We're in the twilight zone. Chad and I walk away from our friend a few feet. There's a stoop. I sat down on the stoop and I'm telling Chad, I just want to go home. I'm so bored. Chad responds with the same. And then that's the last thing that we know. The next thing I know, it's the next day. I'm sitting straight up in my living room on Toulouse. I'm rubbing my arms. I'm beyond freaking out. I have memory. I don't have any memory of coming off the street, and I have no memory of being returned home. I'm the only one out of the 3 with memory of the between. And then Chad, he's had regression done several years later to explain what he understands happened on that evening. Our friend, she has no memory from 11. That's the last thing the 3 of us know is it's 11 o'clock.
So we've only been out an hour and a half,
right?
And we knew how to party back then, so it wasn't like, we were out there doing that, again,
it was the twilight zone, the quarter.
Yeah.
And the rhythm of the quarter. So for us, it was the twilight zone. So again, just for the sake of the conversation and time, we, if I may mention, our friend, because she's given us permission to speak on our behalf, she's vowed to never do it personally or, come out on her own. She's fine with just, leaving it as it stands for her. But this is her story. She claims the last thing she remembers is 11 with us on that street corner. The next thing she knows, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 the next morning, and she's behind the steering wheel of her moving car. Her car is, like I said, it's slow. It's moving slowly, and she hits a parked car, and it knocks off her rear view mirror. And this is what jolted her too. Now, she's also in another section of the city. She's not in the quarter anymore. So that story just even gets stranger.
Wow.
But you asked about the title, Orbduction, and I'll have Chad explain to you what he discovered in his regression that the title comes from.
Yeah. So we're sitting, mid-block right there at the stoop right there by Checkpoint Charlie's. And it's the three of us. And I see this bright light coming from around the corner, like around Frenchman Street. And I could see it kind of through the windows of the bar. It's a bar now. It used to be like I think it was an AIDS awareness place back then.
This is 97.
At that time, this was in 97.
Right.
So, they just had I could see light kind of coming from through the windows and from around the corner. I get the girl's attention. We walk around the corner and there's this orb. And it's just this bright white light of energy. And it's huge. It's like 12 foot in diameter. It's about 15 foot off the ground, and it's about a half a block down the street. And it just comes at us. It just comes at us and just engulfs us. It takes us in. It orbducts us. My next memory, and there's a lot to it, but I'm walking down this corridor. I'm following this little guy that's he's got a big bulbous head. Now I'm following him, so I don't remember seeing him from in his face or anything. But he's got the big bulbous head. His body wasn't like the thin grays that you see on TV. He had more substance. He kind of waddled when he walked. He was kind of dwarfish. On the corner of my eye, to my left, I could see a tall blonde female laying or walking beside me. I didn't turn to see if this was our friend, but this kind of describes our friend. My next memory is I'm in this huge room, and it just seems infinite, just seems huge, very dark. Again, to my left, I could see a tall blonde female laying on an examining table. There were three beings around her, I would say 7, 8 foot tall, very praying mantis-y looking. I kind of focused my attention back to my immediate, and I turn to my right, and there's this little blue being. And he looks like the grays that you see on TV, very small, 3 foot, 4 foot tall at the most, very thin, but his skin color was this just beautiful electric blue, just kind of almost that avatar blue. And his presence, his aura was that of like a professor / scientist, healer, shaman kind of thing. And, I spent some time with him. He showed me some things. And then I was in another room where I could see this. One wall was like just a huge mirror window, or huge window. And I could see stars, and, it's like I was out in the galaxy. It was very dark. Again, I could see the stars and the planets, and there was another craft that kind of just passed by right outside the wall window, just outside. So, but yeah, that's kind of what came out in my regression. So, I do believe that I was out there somewhere.
How did Alta, did you experience the same thing?
No, mine was no comparison. There's no comparison to what I remember and what Chad has described to you. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned in the beginning, all three of us would seem to have had completely different experiences. Now, our friend, she's completely blank from 11 to 3, 4 in the morning. She's got 4 or 5 hours, completely missing. So who knows? But what we've been able to piece together and what have you. In my case, I'm, as I said, the only one with memory. And 1 minute I'm on that corner. The next thing I know, I'm standing on the edge of a crater. The environment around me looked just like the so-called moon landing films, those black and white films. Right. That's what it looked like around me. Now, I don't use the language of aliens, ETs, any of that. I am so beyond having an understanding of what is happening to us that it is not even anything I've been able to give language to. Everyone else does, but I'm just not, that's not my thing. So, I can only describe what I experienced, and then we have to leave it to others to, and boy, there's been a lot of opinion, obviously, but all that we're trying to do is just to express. And it's so wonderful, again, that you're closest to understanding all kinds of things going on in that strange place called the Quarter.
Yes, there are. And I just wanted to say, the stuff that's been edited out of your book, all that is a second book. So you just put it in another book, and it's,
right.
Because that's how that works. Because it's a story. Yeah. Of course there is. So it's a story that needs to be told. But yeah, Bernadine and I can both just vouch for the fact. I mean, I've been down there all my life,
right.
Bernadine and I met at a sci-fi / paranormal convention that I used to help organize, and she began to come over a lot more frequently, right, Bean? And we were, because nearby, that's why I was following you geographically, because on Bourbon there was a bar that was called Big Daddy's, and I think it closed at the end of the 80s. No, maybe sometime in the 90s, but it was a dive, and it was like they had to just kind of put it in a nutshell, strippers, this showman type owner, and a cougar in a cage, and like
boy,
that one of the girls performed with, and then there was another. There was also this huge ass python up in there, but the girls, the girls that lived in there, they had apartments up above the bar, and there was and this is on Bourbon. There was on one time there was this a problem with an entity that was basically afflicting the girls there, and raping them, going into their rooms, raping and sexually abducting.
Wow.
It turned out it was a result of some magic going wrong. Crowley, I'm talking about Crowley and vision, magic and high ritual. So that was on the roof, where this thing was like cornered or where, based, and he would come down and rape the girls.
Oh, God.
And do other things. He would scare, but primarily, which, sticks in your mind. And, they have no reason to lie, and they're not, they're pretty upfront about what they do. So
that's right.
There is, at any given time right now, there's so much magic being done down there, that it doesn't surprise me at all. So while I was listening to you, I've heard of people having sort of experiences like that, that basically, they lose time. They, and I've
that's right.
seen it on TV. But when I was younger and they'd say, I don't remember, I would say, yeah, well, I don't remember either, That's why I started remembering, so I could tell everybody else what went on. But you know what I mean? But back in the day, but it was like, no, you can lose yourself, quote unquote, but then you can get lost down there. And I think it's highly likely that you can pass into
sort of an Outlander type thing where you can go into another century and not come back.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
That 11 by 7 block area that has been there for 300 years, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
it is,
Right.
the hub of all the magic in the city.
Oh,
But
man.
but Bernadine, when you began to come more frequently doing investigations over here, and one of the weirdest ones we had was Johnny Thunders, right? It was right there on the corner across from where the oldest cemetery used to be, on the corner of St. Peter and Dauphine, right? It was Dauphine or Burgundy. Yeah. So I was following you guys on a map, when you get to Esplanade, if you're at Bourbon and Esplanade, that beyond Esplanade on the other side, the northern side, when you cross Esplanade to walk into the Marigny,
Right.
there was a pauper burying field right there. It was for criminals. Yeah, it was for criminals and indigents. And there are buildings built over it, and the buildings go back to about the early 1900s that are on top of it now. But the problem with New Orleans is they just buried people where they could, where it was dry and they didn't push up. But this was it was a criminal burying ground primarily, but for indigents too, the earliest one. So you guys are walking in this, this rotating sort of time thing.
And we were right there in the Marigny Triangle, and when they set things up, in a triangle, we were right there at the point, right there where the fire department is. When you're on those points and at those energies with all that, things start adding up. And
this was 1997, and what we remember is Frenchman was dead.
Yeah,
it looked abandoned.
Yeah, it wasn't like it is now.
In 97. And so we've been gone all these years. We left in 2001, returning this last year. And I've still not returned. I've still not gone back to where this happened to us. I've been around the perimeter of it, but I've seen, just very briefly, Frenchman has become electrified. It's unbelievable.
Well,
the difference to us, because
that's post Treme, that's post HBO that really did that,
Right. That's right.
But I agree with you about the triangle there too. But you're telling me that you were that frightened that you won't even go back near. I'm sorry, my cat just jumped off the sound. Scary sound effect in the back. Yeah. But you really won't go. If you've been that sort of traumatized by it, I guess, would you say that you were traumatized by, by your experience? I could see why you would be, but are you, I guess, have you processed it in
I don't know that it can be processed, because I've given it everything I got, and I keep giving it everything I got. So much of my behavior, I can't even, that's probably why people think often, what a wackadoo, because I can't get my brain wrapped around it all these years into it. And then, more experiences happening to us. And it's like, oh, this is just, okay, now that's just really enough. And so, I get to the point where I feel the pull to go back to that location, but it's almost like I'm on hold. As weird as that sounds, like I'm on hold, like I'm waiting, or I'm waiting to be prompted. I don't know, because I don't understand any of it. But
and so you were in this like barren sort of moonscape type. That's where you found yourself when this happened to you. Do you think it tapped into something familiar to you, like the deserts, the western deserts, or something like that?
Right. Well, what I can say to you is, again, with me knowing nothing, I can tell you what I experienced, and what I experienced is, I felt I was home. Right.
But it frightened you. But it still frightened you.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
What I would say is that's not home, because
exactly.
I'm sure by experience, but Bernadine and I deal with this all the time, because we talk about the dangers, the supernatural reality that from the paranormal investigative perspective, That a lot of the people out there don't realize that the supernatural is very real. It's an objectively real reality that they're looking for, and you can get in a lot of trouble. You can, on one end of the spectrum, you can die. It can kill you because there are things in there that are just as real as you and I. So when anything, I mean, it was weird, but when anything gives you that little tinge of fear, there's something wrong. It's almost like a glamour that, sort of a facade that is almost right, but that's giving you that little bit of hesitation. That would give me pause, really. Even if you felt pulled to go back there, I would do it in all awareness with protection. Obviously, how, but just seriously protect yourself, protect him. If you're going to go back, because something, to me, it just sounds like it wants you, or it wanted you then, and it may want you again. But I would say protect yourself from it. That's my opinion. It just doesn't feel like 100% like, oh, I want to be here.
Right. Again, it's as odd as so many of the other events that have happened to us before and after this experience. So it's just been a very strange ride. I'm sorry.
Tell us about some of the things that have happened after your experience.
Well, again, the word compelled. I was compelled to leave the quarter. I was compelled to leave this area and go back to the Southwest. I'm originally from Arizona. But I told Chad that I was, the compelling was just to go back to the Southwest, but not with any intention to return to Arizona, as, again, interestingly weird as that sounds. So we end up in New Mexico. And again, I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that my mother has died. I'm still traumatized by that going on inside of myself. I have I got a lot of mystery in my childhood, a lot of mystery. So, you're only kind of hearing just this little small portion of this experience.
Right. Yeah, you're condensing it down. So, But so I will say that you were vulnerable. That was the time when you were vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And it happened. So, again, that doesn't make me feel too good about it. Just my opinion.
Right. Well, sure. Everybody's got an opinion. We understand that. And I just would like to mention at this point also, you'd never hear us. You would not be speaking with us unless we met, casually somewhere else. If it would not been for the fact that there were three of us that this happened to. And I came out of this experience with memory, and I have, what other people call their words, I have unknowns in my body from this experience.
I read a little bit about that. So tell us about that.
Well, I don't know what I can offer other than the fact that, again, what I experienced is it wasn't there before that night. When I came to the next morning in my house, I was rubbing my arms and I felt something in my upper arm, and that's how it was discovered. And so that has been an enormous ride in itself, just trying to get help with that. And that has been to no avail.
So that keeps in line with the typical alien encounter where, they implant something and you wake up.
I just, like I said, I have, a real expanded mind on all of this in terms of just my own thoughts, because I don't have answers. What I've often said to folks, again, you haven't heard the very beginning of our story, my story, but my mother indicated that maybe if she's to be believed, and it's hard to question her now because of where she's at, but she had mentioned when I'm a baby that there was an encounter with a craft between her and I and this craft. So if this is true, then this stuff started with me when I'm a baby. Right. So, it's, again, there's just too much mystery, and I don't have any way to get answers, on the surface of it, because how wonderful for you all to have these roots here and to be from here for so long. I didn't have that luxury. My world has been a very different world. So, and Chad, thank the heavens, that whatever happened with Chad, he seems to have, gained a great deal of, I don't know.
Insight, more like insight, or because I was about to segue to him and say, so, you experienced physical beings in your encounter. And I just want to say, You did too. That's right. Have you seen anything like peripheral? I mean, people talk about Men in Black all the time, but I mean, have you seen any of these entities again in other places? Like when you went home, did you have experience or the feeling that they were around?
Always. I'll have Chad mention to you. Chad had an encounter. I was there, but it actually took place between Chad and a man we call a man, a man and not a kid, not, I lost the word. Black-eyed man.
Oh, a black-eyed. Mm-hmm.
And then we both had separate, but almost at the same time, experiences with black cars that were extremely mysterious.
Tell us about those. Both of those, if you can.
Well, this is after we left, the New Orleans area. We went up to New Mexico, and Alta found us a place way up in the mountains. There's a place called Madrid, or what the locals called Madrid. It's right there on the turquoise highway between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. So just the land of enchantment there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in this old saloon from like the 1800s. I mean, old. And there's probably about 6 or 7 or 8 of us, around this round table, And this one guy, he just starts getting darker and darker, throughout the night. And he says something really ugly towards Alta and I. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think anybody else heard it but me. And I kind of look over at him, and he looks at me, and his whole eyes, I mean, the whole eyeball, the whole inside was coal black. I mean, just, there was no whites, there was no color, it was all black.
And we knew this guy, and he had blue eyes.
Yeah.
This was...
We had never had issues with this guy.
We had been friends.
He was just
very
this old...
bizarre.
Hippie living in the,
but it was to us.
Yeah, he was just this old hippie living in the wood, living in the desert. And,
did he remember it? Like,
I never saw him again after this.
He challenged Chad.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. he looks at me and does this, and I just kind of, been with, around Alta, I knew kind of a few things, and I just kind of put up my shields, a block, and I think he left soon after that, from the bar, but yeah,
but he was extremely intense to Chad.
Yeah,
I mean, he was trying to do Chad
harm. It was like he was trying to.
That's a first for us.
But yeah, that was crazy, and
yeah,
we weren't there very long.
He got out of there, and we weren't there much longer after that.
Yeah, we moved from there.
He probably has no.
That sounded a little demonic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was totally negative. It was totally negative. I felt no,
no pleasant,
goodness
no warm
coming
and
out
fuzzy.
of it. Yeah, no, there was no warm fuzzy moment.
And he'd always been warm fuzzy with us, So.
Yeah, but I mean, his demeanor changed, his whole everything, and he and he's got this long stringy hair and this big beard, just long beard,
a mountain guy,
guy,
Back to nature.
Yeah, and he turns and looks at me and just this evil.
Oh, those eyeballs shape shifted for sure.
Oh yeah,
sounds like something jumped in, like a jump in, and in your periphery. I mean, somewhere on your periphery. Well, what about the black car?
Well, that took place in, Chad and I moved to Alabama in 2001, where his parents lived. They're not together, but they both live in this small community. His dad's in his own business, and they're in the locomotive business. And so this took place where the dad had a contract in Georgia, Stone Mountain, Georgia, which happened to be a 3-hour or so drive from where we all lived in Alabama. So I'll have Chad pick it up with you. Yeah. His dad got a contract, and we moved there temporarily in a RV with our puppies while Chad, was doing this contract on this locomotive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I take the dogs out early in the morning because we're starting to work at 6 o'clock. So this had to have been like 5 o'clock. Well, right where our campground was, where we've got our little camper, right there is like this old cemetery. I mean, they had like Civil War and Revolutionary War soldiers buried in this cemetery. That's how old it is, and it's in Atlanta. It's Stone Mountain Park, but we were right in the village. And I started walking the dogs, up through the graveyard, and all of a sudden there's this black, car, and it's always in the same spot. And I'll walk past it, and I'll get a couple of rows down, and it'd pull off. And it did that for like 2 or 3, 4 days straight.
Really?
And
wow.
So I get home from work one day, and Alta's telling me that she's sitting outside and she's painting on some of her shawls and doing some shawl work. And she says this black car, and she described it just like what I'd seen earlier that morning. And it comes in, and the campground was kind of just in like a big circle. So you come in one way and just go out the other. Well, when this car came in, it was coming straight for Alta. So Alta's like, it just kind of weirded her out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll let Alta kind of tell her story about that. But
you're doing fine.
Well, okay.
I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was scared.
She sees this big black car, and you couldn't see the windows, couldn't see through anything. So she grabs the dogs, and she goes into the house because it just kind of weirded her out. Well,
I don't ever remember moving that fast.
Yeah, this car pulls into our little campsite. Well, Alta stays in. She's peeking out the thing. She said it sits there for a while, and then pulls out and goes back, out the park.
Wow.
I mean,
really intimidating.
Again.
Yeah, very.
I knew it was over. I always sound so dramatic, but I'm telling you, a lot of folks who've heard us over the years think we're real airy-fairy about a lot of this and all. And I'm here to suggest that's the furthest thing.
No, Alta, let me tell you.
Airy-fairy about any of it.
If you're scared, they're mistaking that, if it scares you, you have a right to, no, I mean, there are millions of other people that will tell them, yeah, well, let it happen to you. Because
boy,
Bernadine and I have our stories of how we, became interested in all this, and it's like, okay, you don't believe me, like, okay,
That's right.
just let it happen.
To listen to your gut. That's what
live
you
with
need
it
to
for
do.
years, and then somebody comes and says, "Oh, that's not true." Yeah, okay, well,
That's
But I want to tell you that there is a little bit of lore connected with the French Quarter of ghost cars. Just wanted to throw that in there to give you, because it seems like, since your experience, I mean, it's kind of like in the periphery of where you go. There are different stories about it, but there are ghost cars. There's a ghost cab that picks up people, and they're never seen again, and it's a cab that's like this old beat up Lincoln looking, maybe Lincoln or a big old Oldsmobile 88 from like the 70s, 60s, 70s. And it just shows up and literally people disappear. So Dean and I are not going to say, right, don't take that cab. Just ask us first. No, but seriously, we are not going to question any of your experiences at all.
And, really grateful for that. And if I might, let me kind of, again, wet your whistle with your territory of what we were told by our friend that was taken with us. I used the word taken that night in 97. They chose to name her Christine in the book. So for that purpose, Christine, this woman, I absolutely feel from my soul, would not lie about any of these experiences. And she told me, and I believe she told me because of my native background, that a little guy that she dated for a minute in the quarter, who's originally who sounds like he's got history like you folks do, lots of generations, that he shapeshifted into a wolf.
Oh, yeah.
Right in front of her face. Right in front of her face.
Right.
And that He shifted human the second time and then reshifted again the third time. And she, was only a couple of inches in front of his face, and this was daylight. And she flipped completely out, but she's holding it together, maintained, and she just called him on it and said, I'll clean up the language, you just turned into an effing wolf. And she said, he responded in a very startled voice, you saw that. Well, if I might, again, speeding the story up,
well, let me hang on, Alta. We've got 4 minutes to a break, okay, or 3 minutes. But will you guys stay over past the break and continue telling, finish your stories? We usually go about another 15 minutes after 10:30. So would you hang on with us?
Oh, that's awesome! Thanks.
Okay, well, just go ahead and tell us what you were about to say. I'll let you know when Joe wants us to break.
Okay. Well, just what I was going to mention is, I call him the Wolfie Boy part of this event. Wolfie Boy, now this all happens in 97. Fast forward to 2001. Chad and I have imploded. We have come completely apart. Chad leaves New Orleans. He goes back to Alabama. I stay behind. I'm not doing well, but I'm maintaining. I have an encounter with a friend that I hadn't seen in a couple of years, a traveling artist. This dude, again, for the story's sake, says to me out of nowhere, hey, have you heard about Will? And I'm like, again, this is coming out of nowhere. I say to him, Will, Dark Boy? How do you know him? I didn't even know you knew him. Wolfie. And he's like, yeah, Wolfie Boy. And at the time I was calling him Dark Boy. And he responds to me, yeah, he's gone around telling everybody he's got to catch a bus. He's got to get out of town because the aliens are after him. Now, with that said to you, I'm at this point, just in that little portion of the conversation, I am so PO'd I can't think straight. I'm no longer afraid. I'm no longer confused. I'm no longer anything. I'm looking for cameras because I'm positive I'm on somebody's really horrible show on Candy Camera, and I'm being punked. And I'm so like, this is nuts. Yeah. Then we discovered that, his mother and grandmother were.
Yeah, I think they were from around the Homa area, and he was a swamp, or his mom was a swamp witch.
Right.
You see the other lady on the other phone, on the other connection over here, Miss Bernadine. That's her territory. Right, Dean? The Lougarou and the Playtour and the she witch of the swamp and Johnny Fachipas. That's all of from down there. Yeah. Oh, but there is a whole, at least there was, I don't know if there are as many. And again, when I had a child and, I went on with life, I distanced myself a little bit from what goes on down there, even though I write about it. But there is a whole group of people. There's a coven for everything in a way. I mean, I'm just kind of shutting it down. But there are people who are werewolves, period. I mean, I will say that. They will, and they won't deny it. The only time they denied it was when there was a murder, and they kind of blamed it on the vampires. I mean, it was that is New Orleans. That's what everybody loves about New Orleans. It's like, it's like I said again. You don't think they're real. That's all right. But yes, I 100% believe it. And the good thing is that you got angry about it, because it's like, you go from kind of like what, then kind of I'm afraid, and then trying to process it, and then it's aggravating you, and then all of a sudden you're like, stop this shit, that's good, because that's when you see it face to face, you're ready to face it and say, look, I'm tired of this crap, follow me if you want to follow me all over the country, but stop this crap right now. I mean, I agree. I mean, Dean and I 100% were like, yep. Everything you're saying, it's like we've heard, or we've heard secondhand, or we've experienced. I've experienced. She's experienced. So, so you're out there. All right. Well, look, Joe said there was a minute up, but we're gonna go to break. Actually, I picked out a song for you guys for this episode. It's
awesome.
You may remember. I don't know if you might want to turn it on. I don't know if you've muted the room or wherever. Yeah, you can probably turn it on if you go to Pal Talk. You can look for the United Public Radio Network. Yeah, it's United Public Radio UFO Paranormal Radio Network. But anyway, it's Fleetwood Mac's "Hypnotized." So Joby,
Oh,
he's gonna
yeah.
play
Oh,
it
yeah.
after a couple of
Oh,
commercials.
yeah.
That's my memory of the French Quarter.
Right on. That's right
All right,
on.
so we're gonna go to So you're listening to the Supernatural Substation, and we will be back on the flip side of the break. Are we live? I think we're
back.
We're back. The Supernatural Substation is back, and we are talking to Chad and Alta Dillard, authors of Orbducted in the French Quarter. I want to make sure I say it right because they have this. I want to say Orbstructed, but it's Orbducted. And we were chatting during during the break. We were talking about a little bit more about New Orleans. I was just going to finish telling you, but Johnny Thunders, and I know we've spoken about this, and I've written about it. He he OD'd on heroin. We were in that room to do an investigation, and we did a radio show on that particular night. And the guy, I'll never forget the reception guy. He was flaming, and he was so upset. He was like, I don't know what I can't. We had to call them because it was like he said, I've been trying to put this call through to you for I don't know 10 minutes, and I'm like, what? We've been sitting. Literally, I was sitting there, and Dean can tell you with my hand on the phone, like we're ready, But what came out of it was what we found out really was like. He died there of heroin addiction. We have the EVPs of Sable because she had recently died in that same year. And I called to her and said, come and take him out of here. And Dean caught pictures of the thing that was in there with him. And it was a huge demonic entity. And we both agreed that it was his addiction itself. Right.
Yes.
So then when he was loose of it, then it started. The manager called me like a week later and said, "What'd y'all do in that room?" And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Because people were leaving at like 2:15 in the morning from other rooms. So there's like 2 other rooms. People are packing it out." And I said, "I don't know. But I thought we got rid of your ghost, but we left a demon. It's New Orleans. Just rent it to them. Tell them it's haunted. They'll love it. So." Yeah. But anyway, we're getting back to your story. I think we left off on the black car incident, and being terrorized by that. So, let's go on with that and see if were there any other strange experiences.
Well, if I could, I wanted to back up for a moment, and just kind of insert this as you were just sharing all that history and geography with us, your knowledge about the area. When Chad and I mentioned we lived up in New Mexico, then due to jobs, we moved to Denver. Columbine exploded, and it was like, we're so out of here. And we had to come back to New Orleans. So I said, as we're making this decision to return to New Orleans due to jobs, okay, but I'm not living in the quarter again. And so we lived in Mid-City. Is it Mid-City, Chad?
Yeah.
And we lived in a duplex that was extremely alive, extremely haunted, and surrounded by cemeteries. These cemeteries were beautiful. I mean, I loved living next to them. They were.
Tell me where you were. You were.
Chad,
we were right at the end of Canal.
Oh yeah.
And okay, so where there's the
it's
shaved ice, right there where it's the herb shop that's been there forever, and the snowball. We lived right behind that. We were right there at the end
by
of
Oddfellows Cemetery. Yeah.
Mayor man at the time lived up around the block from us. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, as well, just to kind of give you a peripheral there.
Oh yeah, that's my neighborhood. Well, actually, I lived in Faubourg St. John, which is closer to like Broad Street in the fairgrounds where they have the Jazz Fest every year.
Right.
But Mid-City was also, right there. I mean, that is my neighborhood. So, but those cemeteries, it being again, like we were talking about the triangle in, by Frenchman and Esplanade, the crossroads is really, and we all know the significance of the crossroads, but, and so that is, and there's there are a lot of ghosts associated. We have ghosts getting on buses, and we have ghost buses. There are ghost cars too.
Amazing.
So I just wanted to orient you with that, and you can go on and tell us about your experience.
Well, just the fact that very inviting as we move in. We had at the time, we've never had children. We've always had critters. And at that time we had a Great Dane, a big, beautiful black Great Dane, and the other pup was a half Doberman, half Rottweilers. So we had small ponies that you know, people were afraid of just looking at, and we just had babies. We don't connect with anything negative. So not even our critters, you know, they'll love you to death. But they were big and black and they scared people. So it all seemed to be working out just fine as we're outsiders kind of moving back in again. And we move into this place and we get it all set up and we're feeling pretty pleased with ourselves. And, you know, it began. We get to know our neighbors. We'd kind of known him prior to us moving back when we'd lived here before. His wife we fell in love with, and so we got to know them, and they're sharing with us. Well, first of all, what was he involved in? He was creating. He's an artist.
Well, he did latex for like
did a lot of latex
monster
body parts
TVs
and things
shows
like
and
that.
stuff like that. But yeah, he had
Very
mentioned
creative.
that like the every couple that has moved into these, you know, it was a double shotgun, and they said that everybody that had moved into these apartments would break up, and we're like,
or die,
or
die, suicide.
Sounds like a reality show.
Right. But, welcome to the neighborhood.
But Alta and I are like, you know, oh, not us.
Yeah, not us.
And sure enough, I mean, within the year, we split, and they did too. The couple that lived next to us, they split.
They've been married 10 years.
They had been married 10 years.
But she would share stories with us, like she'd come home and and all the cabinets had been opened and rearranged. Kitchen would always be seeming to be rearranged, kind of, you know, the trickster sort of, the trickster sort of element to me, that playful kind of stuff. Well, that was just interesting to hear and playful. But then the dark side, as you all well know, that was affecting us in the biggest way in our apartment. And it was, then we discovered that the couple that lived there prior to us, she had committed suicide. And so it's like, no, this is, you know, I realize we're in a community that is 1,000 billion years old in terms of energy and properties and all, but oh my God, this is crazy. You know, start off at the Voodoo Temple, and, you know, the Voodoo Temple, if I might add, that apartment, we got the book, Shake the Devil Off, because big book made about that apartment. You know, Chad ordered that book. I wasn't too gun-ho for it, but Chad went ahead and ordered it.
Ethan Brown, right?
Right. You know, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, this is very frustrating because this lends to just thinking this guy's got PTSD out of the military.
Well, you saw him. No, I'm saying I wasn't in the book. Yeah, he did. Well, when the History Channel wanted to do the episode, Katrina Cannibal, and they asked me to participate, they also got him. In fact, I think it was really a very well put together episode. It really was. They weren't sensationalizing it. And Ethan said that what he knew about it was enough, in other words, to like blow his mind. And that if he would have let himself, you know, contemplate the supernatural about it, he couldn't have. Yeah, he said that I couldn't have handled it. I don't think he wouldn't have written the book. So he took that route with the PTSD, which is very valid. Makes sense. Right? I mean, he was suffering, and that's a vulnerability. You know.
Yeah, right. That made him a little weak to, you know, for outside.
But I mean, we experienced so many different types of experiences living in that apartment. But one that's even stranger to me than all of the others that seems to be able to be explained is one night there was an invisible fire that took place in the temple. So the smoke rolled itself up into our apartment, tried to move the story along. We're yelling, fire, fire, as we're running down the back stairs into the courtyard and getting everybody out of the, you know, slave quarters that had been converted into little efficiency apartments, getting Miriam out of her area, and there's smoke billowing out of the temple. I mean,
it burnt down, didn't you? You know that it recently burned.
Right after we got back. Right. You know, that was a 20-year plan, it seems. We lived there. 10 years later, we got this insane murder, suicide. 10 years later, we moved back and it burns down. It's just been really strange to us.
It was you that did that. No, I'm just kidding.
You know, right. We didn't do it.
No, it was, according to who I asked, it was like the Christmas lights or something in the front, like the front window. They had a display and it overheated. But again, I'm going to say, no, it wasn't. They fire department had to write something down, but these spontaneous fires and, stuff like that. I mean, I don't think the spirits were happy that they were left behind in the evacuation. I don't think they ever brought the energy back to where Sister Miriam had it. I mean, she moved out a bit because of the fire. And I mean, I'm sure Leo would have said move back in, but she didn't want to. She went somewhere else. So yeah, that apartment and the ones behind the courtyard behind it. So finish the story. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but I just wanted to know if you knew it burnt down.
Right. Yeah, we had just moved back. We'd only been
so
back
you got everybody riled up and out on the street.
Well, we're actually in the courtyard. Got everybody out and back and around the courtyard, and but this portion of it we don't generally ever mention, or doesn't seem to be thought of too much. But it always struck me as just unexplainable. Is all of a sudden above us, because we're out in the courtyard, so we got the sky right above us. This is a clear night, and we get the weirdest weather out of nowhere. I mean, out of nowhere. And what I mean by the weirdest weather, it was as if, now lots of movies and all have been made in that property and in that courtyard with the big movie cameras and the so on and so forth, the sets and so on. But there was no movie making going on this night. This is in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden it was as if there was like an invisible hand out there in the sky flipping on a switch, and we're getting lightning strikes. Not all over anywhere else, above us, like above us. And it was that kind of behavior that I took note of, thinking, what the hey is going on here? Watching the smoke billowing out of there must have been, without any exaggeration, easily 10 to 15 big old beefy, how many, Chad?
Yeah, there was me, Miss Miriam, and all these firefighters, and we're looking all over the in the temple looking for fire. We could not, everybody can see smoke, but we cannot find the fire. And eventually we find it, and it kind of one of her jars, the candles with the jars in it, burst, and it traveled alongside her things, and went up the wall, and it stopped right at the saints. Now she had her wedding gown and her husband's suit up there from when it was like their anniversary altar. And now if it would have caught that her wedding dress and all that, it would have been a totally different story. But it stopped, that fire stopped right there at all the pictures of the saints. And it was funny because I went in to pick Alta from work the other day, and I stopped by the fire department there in the French Quarter. And I'm like, boy, I bet y'all got some really creepy stories, And he's like, no, not really. And I said, I got one for you. And, I kind of tell him, about living in the voodoo temple and stuff like that. And, I told him, I said, about when they come to, check on when we lived there, and then the Zach and Addie thing. And then, it burning down. He goes, and the older fireman says, you know what? He goes, I think I got called to all three of those calls that you're talking about. He goes, I remember that night. We could not find where that fire had started. It took forever to find.
Yeah. Well, and you know what else? That building that they're in is haunted. They just probably didn't say anything about it. But it used to be a house of prostitution, and apparently upstairs there's a lady ghost, who just didn't want to leave. Yeah, I don't even know if they know. That's a whole different crew, but it remains. Yeah. We almost got the investigation on that, Dean. I have to remember to do that. We may be able to go there and do an investigation.
Sure.
Because I know people that
Yeah.
I got strobe. But that doesn't surprise me, although that is kind of ominous that the candle broke and, then it burnt, the whole place burnt down. I was like, and it goes back to Katrina for me. My daughter and I and Bernadine experienced it too, just as the sick feeling. It was like, they wouldn't let us back in certain areas of the city. We weren't living like I said, my daughter was 15 when it hit. So she was still in high school on the North Shore. We're on the north side of the lake. And, we went back as soon as they said, well, the French Quarter's open and all, and they had the lights on and it was open and there were bars open and all, but it was just dark. It just had this ominous shadow, and it's like the light, the street lights could not break through it. And we talk about it in that episode, in that History Channel episode. We talk about it, how it was, a pile, just hanging like a pile over the city, just this, this whole shroud light. And and she's very sensitive, and she said, do you see the shadow? How come it's so dark? And it's been pretty much like that, and it's devolved a lot. A lot of people say, oh, we've got it back. No, they really don't. That's like a watershed moment for New Orleans. I mean, she's 300 years old this year, but she's really, she's not the New Orleans that even I and my generation used to know. Now there's just so much out of hand down there, but so go on with your story. That's what I was going to say.
Well,
I just wanted to, because
I was going to move us. Sorry.
You all right?
No, I was just. I just didn't want to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. Actually, Joe popped up just at that moment because I was looking at the time, and I could talk to you for another hour. So Dean is going to have you back at some point, so we can talk about it again.
That would be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We'll do a part 2.
I know you're sitting there listening. Yeah, we'll do a part 2 and some more. And you have another book to write, so you should go and write that. But
definitely.
Thank you for the guide.
Great. And we should stay in touch, all of us, because you're not crazy. The city is like that. We are a very magical destination, but you got to be careful. You've been tested by fire. But I'm just saying for the people out there thinking about it, just be careful. The city is haunted. But thanks so much. It was Chad and Alta Dillard, and the name of the book is Orbducted in the French Quarter. So it's new. Look for it, and hopefully there'll be another one coming soon. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Great, and we'll be talking to you, and we'll have you back. Okay.
Wonderful.
Sounds great.
All right, stay in touch. If you have any crazy stuff, let us know.
You bet.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for coming. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, Dean, we're sitting there listening. I knew it was like, yeah, and we can relate to it. Well, we're up against the end of the show. So let's say bye-bye. You're Bernadine LeBlanc, and they can look for you online on Facebook, lsprSociety.com. It's Bernadine, BERNADINE, at lspr-society.com. I'm all over the place. ElleenPastanio.net. I sell books myself, and they make great gifts. So stay tuned. Stay here for Kathy Bilski. You're going to get high and go in the quantum leap, etc. And stay up for the 2 a.m. Terminus, which, keeping with the theme of tonight, is called Abducted. So 2 a.m. right in the same place. Remember, we are the Supernatural Substation. You're listening to us on the United Public Radio Network and iHeart Radio Partner. Look for us on Spreaker and sometime live on YouTube, but we still have a channel there. We're not live. You'll see our beautiful pictures right now, but YouTube and uprntalkradio.com. All right, that's it. Have a great weekend, and we are disconnecting.
Night.
Night.
If you're thinking about upgrading to a riding mower, make a path to the Home Depot. Right now, the Pull & Pro 42-inch model's just $11.39. Its 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine will power through even the thickest grass.
And its rugged reinforced steel cutting deck with 10-year warranty will keep you going and mowing for a very long time. The Pool & Pro 42-inch riding mower, just $1139, now at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only.
Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.